I would have liked to ask a question. Thank you.
Sorry, his time is up. Sénatrice Gagné.
Senator Gagné. Thank you, Madam Chair. Honourable colleagues, I would first of all like to thank our colleague, Senator Dean, who as sponsor of Bill C-45 has ensured first and foremost that he is facilitating and encouraging its study by all senators in full knowledge of its cause. At the very foundation of C-45 is the recognition that the consumption of cannabis products is widespread across the country, and that it's in the public interest that it be regulated, both for health and public safety reasons. It's an eminently rational position, and for all the reasons invoked by Senator Pratt and Senator Gold during their speeches, I support Bill C-45. I am benefiting from second reading of this bill to draw the Chamber's attention and the government's attention to the issue of prevention and public awareness raising, particularly with respect to the proposed taxation plan. One of the main issues which the government wishes to address with C-45 is the stranglehold of criminal groups on the sale of cannabis products. In its proposal for a excise tax on cannabis products published last November, the Department of Finance explains that, and I quote, "The level of proposed taxation seeks to maintain the prices at a low level so as to eliminate the black market in accordance with the discussion by the Department of the Minister of Finance, which was held last June." In the same document, the federal government states that, and I quote, the combined taxation rate on cannabis buds contained in the final packaging of a product should not exceed the following amounts: so $1 per gram, or 10% of the sales price of the producer. End of quote. Note that in the state of Colorado, the tax charged is roughly 30%, and in Washington state, it is 37%. Control on taxation rates is, however, a double-edged sword. If we can better attack the black market by limiting taxes on products, we are also losing the dissuasive effect that high excise taxes have on products deemed harmful. The parallel drawn with alcohol and tobacco products is very useful and food for thought. In his report on the state of public health in Canada in 2015, the Chief Public Health Officer explained that the price setting and taxation are tools that can discourage the purchase of alcohol, and as a result reduce the social and health repercussions associated with alcohol, in particular impaired driving and alcohol-related crime. The increase of the minimum price is one of the most effective methods capable of reducing consumption, deaths tied to alcohol, and admissions to hospital. End of quote. The same principle applies to tobacco consumption. In fact, in a recent report produced for Health Canada by Professor David Levy at Georgetown University, taxes have the largest dissuasive effect on the consumption of tobacco products. Studies and surveys carried out in Canada also show that cigarette consumption is lower in provinces where cigarette taxes and prices are higher. In his report, Professor Levy encourages an increase of taxes on tobacco products since their consumption is not dropping as quickly as desired. Note that the federal government committed in March 2017 to reducing the smoking rate to under 5% of the population by 2035, while the current rate is over 14%. However, the taxation rate on tobacco products is currently set at nearly 68% of the sales price, and the report by Mr. Levy recommends that it be raised to 80%. So we are far from the 10% proposed by the federal government on cannabis products. We know, however, that the consumption of cannabis products also has significant impacts on youth aged 14 to 25. According to the Canadian Centre on Substance Abuse and Addiction, adolescents are the ones who are particularly susceptible to harms tied to marijuana consumption because their brain is quickly and intensively developing. Chronic cannabis use is associated with attention, memory, and reasoning disorders, particularly among those who started consuming at the beginning of their adolescence.
In order to protect public health, we have to judge cannabis products as being damaging products, particularly for youth. It's not legalization per se that will be problematic. In fact, this battle against the black market, the government will strike a significant blow to trafficking that occurs currently in our high schools and even in our elementary schools. It will also withdraw from the market products of lesser quality containing suspect or dangerous components. The government should be ready at the same time to establish reduction objectives and of cannabis products, particularly among the youth, and invest heavily in education and awareness programs without justifying the absence of such investment by low tax revenues on the product. The tax scheme that's proposed should be reviewed because the revenues projected will not in any way be sufficient to attain the objectives. So while it is in committee, we will have the following questions. As our government has decided not to use the most efficient tool that we know as a dissuasive factor, what other measures do they propose using? If awareness and education becomes the tool of choice to discourage consumption of cannabis consumption among youth, how will the government finance such campaigns, particularly given the low tax revenues that they will in fact draw from the sale of cannabis? Will the federal government invest in the long term? The supplementary resources required to continue with awareness campaigns? Will the federal government invest in scientific studies to evaluate the efficiency of these campaigns, these awareness campaigns, and their effect on adolescents' knowledge, attitudes, practices, and beliefs, as well as that of their parents, young adults, and other consumers, and even non-consumers for that matter? Will the federal government set objectives to reduce recreational use of marijuana products as it has done for tobacco, and how do they intend to attain those objectives? These are just but a few sample questions that the senatorial committee charged with the study of this bill should and could ask when they reflect and discuss the matter of the implementation of C-45, all the while highlighting public health as the centerpiece of their study. Thank you.
Senator Rain.
Senator, question.
Sénatrice Gagné, accepteriez-vous une question?
Would you accept a question, Senator Gagné? Yes, certainly. Senator Rain, go ahead.
Your comments at the end about questioning how the government is going to educate people, especially young people, about the dangers and the harms involved in smoking marijuana. My question for you would be, do you think that once a product becomes legal for sale, that there will be an obligation on the government, or a pressure certainly, to allow those producers and sellers of marijuana to market their product the way normal legal products can be marketed? And if they can, and I presume they will try, do you think that young people today, once exposed to marketing for government-approved products, therefore they must be okay, that marketing will be up against taxpayer-funded education programs to tell kids it's not okay? So there's a real mixed message here. How would you think that should be handled? Thank you.
Sénatrice Gagné.
Merci de votre question. Je pense que ça.
Thank you for your question, Senator. I think that you've just underlined the fact that cannabis, or the marketing of cannabis, could be compared a little bit to how we do it with alcohol and tobacco. Is it okay to smoke tobacco? Is it okay to drink alcohol? Well, I think that the consumers' psychology changes and their attitudes change over time. What we have to do is try to prevent from the outset for the non-consumer to become a consumer. If we can avoid that, it's already a gain. And we also have to ensure that adolescents realize the risks. We also want to provide parents with all the information that they need in order to discuss these issues with their kids. The whole notion of public awareness campaigns, or public education campaigns, targeting various sectors of the population, can be initiated by the federal government, provincial governments, community groups, parent groups, community centers, to otherwise occupy young people. It's not a federal government problem. It's an issue for all of civil society, so that we can prevent and protect our children, because they are the most vulnerable.
Will the senator take another question also? Okay, merci. I think some of the concerns you raised, as well as Senator Gold, about marijuana consumption and the public health, and especially for youth, are concerns that we all share. One of my greatest fears in legalizing marijuana has always been what has happened with the cigarette industry and the contraband market that is very robust, and in fact creating all sorts of health risks, especially for youth and those that cannot afford to purchase legal cigarettes. So I'm just, based on what has happened with cigarettes, I'm anticipating that such risks are also going to be before us, and especially with youth, when they can get something cheaper and on a product that wouldn't be regulated, and the kind of health risks that would introduce. So I'm wondering if you have looked at these concerns, and in legalizing a product, how would we be able to deal with this added issue of something that would be an illegal product once we legalize? So how do we prevent and ensure, greater safety for youth?
Je crois qu'au niveau du tabagisme,
Well, as with the fight against tobacco, I don't want to go back 75 years, of course, when they started promoting tobacco, but cannabis has been in use for a while as well. We know that. As far as the use of tobacco, there has been a reduction in smoking. At one point, 80% of the Canadian population smoked, but this has been reduced to great measures now. We're currently bringing changes to the marketing of tobacco, packaging, for example, plain labels, etc. We have to also gain some information and knowledge from other countries who have done other things, whether it's for tobacco or alcohol. Public education, awareness raising, takes a certain amount of time. It requires a certain maturity, and we have to have a lot of fact backing us up in order to best judge which campaign would work best. What is of major concern to me is that we will fail to invest sufficiently in these public education campaigns and in the prerequisite research on the issues as to the effect with the consumer. Time has expired. Would you like a few extra minutes? Well, I believe I answered the questions, unless clarifications are being sought. Is my question adequate to your, my answer adequate to your question?